Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Tuesday night again. This is another week, actually this week and next, where we will not be working on your personal creed document. This week, so last week we talked about the law of entropy and the art of progressive living. This week, we're going to talk about the law of expectation, which has a couple of arts. And we're going to talk about the law of balance and the law of 1% next week. And then 2 weeks from now, we get back to building your personal creed document, which will be your document on your values. And as I mentioned last time, we want to spend a little time building up to this because we want that. That is really, they're all important, but I think it's kind of the central part of your creed document. It is in the middle, but it is also kind of the foundation for what you're going to build up towards the end. So this week, we're going to address the law of expectation. This is going to feel a little bit like the law of belief. And I'll share it this way. I'm going to revisit a quote that I shared earlier from Bobby Sommer, who was paraphrasing Dr. Maxwell Maltz, when he said, "We always act in a manner that is consistent with our self-image." This time I'm using the word expectations, regardless of that self-image or our expectations. So the law of belief and the law of expectation are kind of like cousins. If we believe something to happen, it's likely to happen. If we expect something to happen, it likely will happen. And this week, we actually look at the social mirror kind of again. The expectation mirror, I'm going to call it this time, the expectation mirror is how we see the world and what we expect to happen. If you expect something to happen, it likely will. If you expect bad results, you might get bad results. So I want to just ask, and you guys can let me open up chat, but I'd love to hear from you regularly through your microphone. Has anybody experimented with craft? We talked about craft like 3 weeks ago. Has anybody thought about that any or tried it on a belief they wanted to, a self-image kind of belief they wanted to change? Has anybody experimented with it or played around with it? Thought about it? I see puzzled looks on the few of you who have cameras. Has anybody had a problem with it? Maybe I'll say it that way. Or like, it didn't settle well with you, or any thoughts? Someone say hi on chat so at least know you're hearing me.
I have a comment.
Yes, thank you.
I was thinking about because some beliefs, they might be portrayed, other people might think them as bad. So mine was like, I get sometimes you're too nice, or you're too nice is like a bigger one. But my belief was kind of trying to switch to, is this a bad or a good thing, depending on the circumstance. So just kind of changing that mindset from what people say, how it gets, I don't remember the term, when it like sticks to your mind.
Yeah.
And realizing that it's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. So too nice. Nice is obviously good, right? But too nice might be, if it's an extreme, might handicap you in some ways, right? Is what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Soraya. That was perfect. Anybody else? Well, let me tell you a little dilemma I have, because I'm going to give you a little story about myself today that's a little self-revealing, but I personally deal with anxiety, and it hasn't handicapped me too much in life, but at times it has. And so I have been a big believer in this self-help area and craft because it did help me. But the problem, and if you come to my office in the Manwaring Center, I have a stack of 30 self-help books. And I've read them all, and I like most of them. The problem with that self-help world is there's never any reference to anything of faith. They don't talk about our divine worth. They always talk about how we struggle because we're, human beings with human frailties, so we're descendants of caveman, and they all either had to, eat or be eaten that day, right? They lived in a constant state of fear, and that's been passed on through our DNA to be us being fearful. Well, and craft is a really good and smart tool, right? Managing how the left brain and the right brain work. It's really great. But I wanted to find something that had some faith base to it. And I found it, and I'm going to actually share this link with you in my email I sent out this week. I found it in this talk. And I'm not going to be able to move my chat. Maybe it's hidden behind something up here. Dang it. All right. Do you guys see the chat box? Or do you see my screen? Chat box or just screen? Okay, good. All right. So I can't see what I'm about to show you, but I've got it memorized. So this is from a talk that Carrie Wrigley gave. And the title of the talk is Christ-Centered Healing from Depression and Low Self-Worth. And I would tweak that title that said Christ-Centered Healing from Anxiety and Fear, right? Well, this is what we call the Wrigley Diamond. And the way the Wrigley Diamond works is at the top of the diamond, we have events that happen. And usually these events have to do with our relationships, right? So we're going to lose loved ones. We're going to have difficult transitions. We're going to have conflict or lack of interpersonal skills, or maybe even some abuse, loss of opportunities, maybe even disappointment, okay? Well, here's what happened with me in my life. Has anybody ever heard the word downwinder? People my age, if you're from Utah, know that term. Anybody know what downwinder means? Anybody from southern Utah? Okay, I'm getting blanks, so I'm assuming no. Well, I was born in southern Utah in 1960. And what was happening in 1960 in Nevada was that they were doing nuclear tests. I could show you a picture. They were doing full-on nuclear bomb explosions in the deserts of Nevada. And all of that radioactivity blew downwind, upwind, somewhere to southern Utah, northern Arizona. So Jack knows the story. Okay. So anyway, as a downwinder, that means that me and my people who are like me have more inclination, more risk for certain bad diseases like leukemia, brain cancer, different kinds of cancers. And so for me, I didn't worry about it that much. But about 13 years ago, my brother, who was born a year later than me and who shared the same bedroom with me for a while, we even shared the same bed when we were little kids, he got brain cancer. And within a year and a half, he was dead. And the government sent him a $50,000 check because he's a downwinder. Well, what do you think that did to me, right? So I just lost my brother. I had grief and I had fear. Well, the next step in the diamond is we begin, let's see if this is going to show, we begin to have some thoughts. So what kind of thoughts do you think I started having? Any ideas? Jack knows the answer already. Jack, where did you hear this story from? Maybe you could chime in.
Actually, I heard it from you.
Okay.
So you were feeling really nervous and scared, kind of paranoid, because if that happened to somebody who was born after you, it was inevitably in your mind going to happen to you.
So have I told this class this story already?
No, you told me this in your office.
Oh, okay, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. So yeah, Jack's come and visit me. By the way, all of you are welcome to come visit me anytime. So yeah, Jack got the whole deal. So I'm not going to do the whole deal tonight. We won't have time. But it began to affect my thinking, right? I began to worry about it. I began to be fearful of it. I even started exhibiting symptoms of the stuff my brother had. Well, what happens sometime, and so let's talk about thoughts for a minute. So we have these negative or positive thoughts. We have what if thinking. Today's arts that go along with this class have to do with positive self-talk, positive vision, and the proactive operating process, right? Well, when we have negative thoughts, this is the challenge, okay? David Burns said, when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. And Martin Rossman said, the root of all suffering is the difference between, I'm saying it backwards, but the discrepancy between the real and the imagined is the root of suffering. So what happened with me is my reality is, even though I'm a downwinder, my chances of getting the same kind of brain cancer that killed my brother is probably 1 in 250,000. For all of you non-downwinders, it's like 1 in 500,000. Well, my chances are higher, but in reality, I'm probably not going to get it. If I do get it, I'll be dead in a few months. My wife will be $50,000 richer, which isn't very much in reality. So the imagined and that gap between the reality and the imagined is how much we're going to suffer. So when it comes to our thinking, there's some things that we can do. We can cancel, replace, that's craft. We can sing a hymn, we can rehearse something or inspirational quotes, practice meditation, I'm a big fan of that. Go and do something positive, that's the proactive operating process, or visualize success. So that's very much like craft, okay? Now at the bottom, so this is a really great quote. Weak is he who permits his thoughts to control his actions. Strong is he who forces his action to control his thoughts. That's from Og Mandino. Well, at the bottom, I'm going to skip this for the sake of time. This is meditation stuff. I'm going to send you a link to it. At the bottom, our negative thinking can affect our behavior. So the big mistake I started making is I started Googling symptoms, and I started Googling things that were kind of scary. And the result of that is it just made my thinking worse. Some negative behaviors could be overeating, sleeping in, and eating and sleeping aren't necessarily bad, murmuring. Some people will resort to, some drinking, for example. I've never drank, so I don't know, but I've understood that can be a factor. Well, today, and you get 10 points extra credit if you'll watch this little 12-minute video clip. Here are some positive actions that can happen at the bottom of the diamond. Rather than murmuring or being or just being grumbly, write 3 things every day, 3 new things every day that you're thankful for. Second, keep a journal. List the things from today that you're grateful for. A similar thing. Exercise is super important, meditation, and random acts of kindness. That's from Sean Acor. So again, if you watch that little TEDx talk this week, just let me know on the class meeting report and lesson evaluation, and we'll get you 10 points extra credit. Well, then what happens is sometimes when these negative thoughts and negative actions, it can actually affect your spirit. It will damage how much you feel the spirit, how in tune you are with the spirit. And then it compounds the relationship problem even more. So the next time you have something that happens, it's going to be a problem. So what Carrie Wrigley teaches us is that we should do these 3 steps. Now, I want you to think about craft. It's very much like craft, but she keeps the Savior as part of it. Identify the negative thoughts and behavior. Replace them with positive thoughts and behavior, and then practice, practice, practice. And over time, you can twist your mindset away from the fearful and towards the positive. You can eliminate self-defeating behaviors and replace them with positive behaviors that will help you be more successful. Okay? Now, here's lesson number 2. Okay? When I was dealing with my anxiety, I discovered this book called The Happiness Trap. If you know anybody that has anxiety, this is the go-to book. And what I learned is that, and it's based on acceptance commitment therapy. These are the 3 steps. Number 1, accept the fact that you might have a panic attack. I've had them. Accept the fact that you might be worried today or that you have some fear. Well, what happens is when we have fear and anxiety, sometimes we have a tendency to latch onto it and just fight it, make it worse. And then when we do that, we don't do step 2. We don't choose a value and act on a value. So my example would be, if I'm dealing with anxiety, I can get grumbly and mad and avoid all the things that make anxiety, or I can go out and serve my wife, my kids, my faith, do a hobby that I love, call a friend, something positive that I'm passionate about. When you act on a positive value, the worry just becomes background noise. So what I did, and this is just a little thing, is the thing about The Happiness Trap, again, like all my other self-help books, it had 0 to do with faith, not one bit. So I took it upon myself to write a little book called Breaking the Chains of Worry and Anxiety, where I take the lessons of Liberty Gel, the stuff that Heavenly Father taught Joseph Smith in Liberty Gel. Because guess what? As I'm reading the Liberty Gel lessons, Heavenly Father taught Joseph Smith acceptance commitment therapy. And I'm going to do this really fast. So here it is. Joseph Smith was told that if the very gates of hell should open up against you, if you're to have really bad trials, well, then the next step is no. If you have a hard time, if you have anxiety, if you have something you're afraid of, know thou that my son, that all these things will be for your good, and I will be with you forever and ever. And therefore, act. Therefore, hold on and cheerfully do all things that lie in your power for your good. Well, guess what happens? You can put that with acceptance commitment therapy. I'm doing this really fast. If you have anxiety, you can accept the fact that you're going through a hard time. You're having a trial. Then you need to go to the no part. The no part is understanding your values. Therefore, act on your values. And there's great healing from that. So 2 quick stories from this. And I'll send you a link. Here's a little practice that we came up with. We call it STAR, but STAR has 2 A's. Okay? STAR with the A squared. When you're anxious or dealing with something difficult, just pause. I'd say pause better than stop, but then it's par, and par makes no sense. Tar or whatever. So stop. Take a deep breath. Accept things as they really are. Ask yourself what you really want, what's important to you, and then act on that value. And there's healing there. Okay. 2 quick stories, and then we'll close. Okay. This is my Uncle Wells. He actually just passed away about a year ago. When he was about 68-ish, he had a massive heart attack. A heart attack that was so severe that it damaged permanently about half of his heart. It didn't kill him. Well, he lived about another 17 years on a heart that only worked halfway. Well, for a lot of people, they would just get mad and grumbly and quit. Well, for my Uncle Wells, he accepted the fact that his heart wasn't going to work well, but he said, this is what I'm going to do with my life. Every day, except Sunday, he would wake up, he'd put his little pontoon boat in the back of his truck, he would drive to a nearby lake, and he would be on that lake until he caught 5 fish. Sometimes that was an hour, sometimes it was 4, sometimes it was half an hour. But he enjoyed every day that he got to go fishing. And then he'd go home and carve these little fan birds out of wood and give them to his friends. he enjoyed his life. He accepted challenges and he enjoyed his life. This is a story about Fa Jiazing. Now, Fa Jiazing, maybe some of you have heard of his story. In this picture, he's 102. When he was in his late 80s, his wife passed away. And then shortly thereafter, a windstorm came up. He's from India. A windstorm came up and picked up a sheet metal piece, and it started spinning through the air. And right in front of him, it decapitated his son. He watched his son die right in front of him. Well, think about the top of the Wrigley Diamond, right? He could have just given up. He could have said, my life is miserable. I've lost my wife. I've lost my son. But instead, he thought about something that he valued, which was running. And he started running again. And this is him at 102 running the New York City Marathon. So he acted on a value rather than his challenge. Okay? I can't see this, but I might have it memorized. President Packer said it was meant that life would be a challenge, that all of us would have some anxiety. Hey, Isaac, some disappointment.
Hey, Dad.
How are you, buddy?
Good.
Some challenges, and we will have some miserable days. But he said, stand steady and face them. Things will work out and be for our good. So the lesson here with the law of expectation is if you believe you can, you probably will. If you believe you can't, you probably will not. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the law of expectation and how we can tie that with your values, with positive self-talk and positive vision, with progressive living, and actually live and do and be better. All right, that was fast. Any questions that any of you have? Again, this week, you do have a little extra assignment. You don't have a personal pre-document assignment, but you have to write a little paragraph about Team Hoyt. And Team Hoyt is a great example of the law of expectation. Okay, questions or comments before we turn you loose for the night? What I will send you in the email this week is I'm going to send you a link. And again, this is of no graded need. It's just if you're interested in this topic, I'm going to send you a link to Carrie Wrigley's talk and a link to a couple of stories that are related to this. Okay? So again, just for your value. The question from Fabiola is, if you watch the TEDx talk anytime this week, just mention it in the class meeting report and lesson evaluation. Just say, watch the talk or did extra credit assignment. And then on that last week, that last assignment, I'll add 10 extra points. So we've done that before with the BYU iConnect thing. But I will have this one and one other little video that I'll invite you to watch later that's not in the regular course. But if you do watch those, then you'll be getting some extra credit points. Okay, questions? All right, I will stay on for the next few minutes to visit with anybody that wants to. If not, we'll get together again next week. Thank you, guys.